Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got two questions, a shorter and a longer one, and we're going to start with the shorter one, and it comes to us from Daniel Gibson, who asked, Hey Thor, I know it's early, but any thoughts on Starfighter, the Star Wars movie set for release in 2027 with Ryan Gosling? Seems like we're actually getting it, they just released the cast list. I'm honestly cautiously excited for it. Seems like it might be intended as an effort to appeal to the male audience again, plus a lot of solid names involved. And it's set in a previously unexplored timeline. My only reason for caution is just how much I've been bait and switched by Lucasfilm, especially Kenobi, since the Disney acquisition. And I would say I'm actually pretty excited for it, more so than I am the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that comes out next year in May, which, as I've said before, I think it's going to be a fine movie. I don't know that it's going to be amazing. I don't think it's going to suck. I think it's going to be better than Mandalorian Season 3 was, not that that's a very high bar. But I'm sure it'll be fine. I think my issue with it is I don't really care about a Mandalorian and Grogu movie. The first two seasons I enjoyed, and then Grogu goes off at Luke, and I feel like, you know what? That's an end to a story right there. I don't really know that we need more of these two characters, or at least more of them together. Grogu can go off with Luke and be trained, and Mando can go do his own thing. And if you really want to continue the series, you could. Or you could continue the Mandalorian series with just him and have a different series, a Luke and Grogu series, do it in animation. And, well, there's a million things they could have done, and they didn't. They just put them back together, as you all know. But anyway, I'm not super duper excited for the Mando and Grogu movie. I'm expecting that they just took an episode and they're going to up the budget a little bit and expand it a bit, and there you go. I'm sure it's going to tie into Thrawn coming back and maybe Ahsoka Season 2 and bigger things in the Mandoverse, quite possibly. There is still that Dave Filoni movie out there, which we are all assuming is some kind of culmination to the Mandoverse movie, which we haven't heard anything about in over 2 years at this point. But assuming it's still a thing, I'm sure it will be connected to that. Though we have heard the rumor that if the Mando and Grogu movie doesn't do well, we don't get that movie. But anyway, you asked me about Starfighter, and that does seem to, as you said, that does seem to be actually happening. It is in production right now. I believe it begins filming like this month or next month. We just got the cast list, which included Matt Smith, Mia Goth, of course Ryan Gosling, and some others. And it does seem like it's going to be maybe something a little different, yet at the same time, we've heard that Ryan Gosling's character is going to be protecting a child, his nephew, so that does sound very familiar. Sounds a lot like Mando and Grogu, or even The Bad Batch. But assuming there's a lot more to it than that, I mean, it's called Starfighter, so I don't know why it would just be about uncle protecting his nephew. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, or hopefully there is. And so I am excited for something that is hopefully different from what we've been getting. Again, I think that's my problem with Mando and Grogu. I'm not expecting anything really different outside of just like, again, a bloated episode of the show. It is going to be in a new and different time period. However, that time period is post-sequel trilogy time period. I think they said 5 years after the sequel trilogy. There even might be sequel trilogy characters in this one. I don't think that is confirmed, but there are whispers and rumors of one of them or maybe more of them showing up. And we do know that Simon Kinberg is doing a whole trilogy in this time period, the post-sequel trilogy time period, as well as the supposed Rey New Jedi Order movie that, well, we haven't heard much about that one either, other than it gets a new writer every couple weeks or couple months. I'm exaggerating, but it's had like 4 of them. And so, yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for Starfighter. I don't think it's going to save Star Wars or anything or be something monumental and blow us all away and be the best thing ever, but I hope it's a good, solid movie and that it gets people back into the theater for Star Wars and that they enjoy it because, as I always say, I do always root for Star Wars. I don't like Disney, but I do still root for it independent of that. Much like if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, for example, you might not like your owner or the moves he makes, but you still love your team. And I say that as a Green Bay Packer fan who thanks your owner for Micah Parsons. But anyway, moving on to the next question. And again, this is a longer one. So what I'm going to do, instead of reading it in its entirety, is I'm going to try and sum it up the best I can. My apologies to the animation connoisseur who wrote it up, but I'm going to try again to sum it up here. And they're basically asking, or have had a bit of a disagreement with their father, where the father says maybe Star Wars has become oversaturated and that it should just end. And if you really want to keep making it, instead maybe make something else like it, but something new and original. Whereas they believe there is still life left in Star Wars and that it has mainly been a mismanagement of the franchise that has led to its decline in popularity, not a problem with Star Wars itself or too much of it, citing how once upon a time we even got more of it than we do today in terms of games and stuff like that. Also saying of it something I've said before, that it's not just a film franchise, but something that transcends that, and it's a cultural phenomenon that has importance and should be, in a sense, preserved or continued for future generations. And they ultimately go on to ask if there's a way to change their father's mind to essentially convince him that Star Wars can still be a thing. And to that I would say, and it's probably not exactly the answer you're looking for, but to that I would say there's really nothing you're going to do to change your father's mind, I think, or to change the mind of anyone who thinks Star Wars is on the decline, or maybe past its prime, or just needs to end already, or that it's been so bad lately that there's no saving it. And I get those points of view. I've been disappointed my fair share of times in what Star Wars has given us since Disney took over. But in all reality, they, Disney and Lucasfilm, are the only ones that can change the reality of the situation. There's nothing I can say that is going to convince somebody that Disney is terrible and can never make good Star Wars, that they're going to someday make good Star Wars. Disney has to prove that. And yes, there is some quality Star Wars out there to be had. There's things like Andor, Rogue One. I think Bad Batch was a decent show. I think Skeleton Crew was a fantastic show aimed at a, younger or more family-oriented audience, and that it didn't get the love maybe it deserved. There was another question I read recently about that one where they asked if maybe it just didn't get promoted enough, and I kind of agree with that. I didn't really see it anywhere, unlike how I see a lot of the other shows they do all over the place. But anyway, Disney and Lucasfilm are the only ones that can save the future of Star Wars. Now, it's not going to die. I think it's going to survive in the hearts and minds of a lot of fans. Even if they stop making content, I'm still going to be a Star Wars fan for the rest of my life. I'm sure that goes for a lot of people. And I do agree with you that Star Wars, I think, is something that should be shared with future generations, that they should be shown, and hopefully they can get something out of, as I believe these previous generations, our generations, have. And it would be great if this generation and future generations could continue to get good Star Wars in their time that could be shared with even more future generations, and that it could go on indefinitely. I think there's no reason why it couldn't. I don't think there's any lack for potential with the franchise. I do think some people are maybe just getting weary of it or just not as interested in it as they once were, and that's hard to overcome unless you are, again, continually producing really good content or really good stories. I hate using the word content. But at the same time, I do think an argument could also be made that maybe something else should take inspiration from Star Wars and be the next big thing. I mean, why not? Just yesterday, I did that video discussing everybody's favorite franchises, or what the most popular ones were among Star Wars fans, their favorite non-Star Wars franchises. And one of the common themes was there's not a lot new in there. And sure, if you're an older franchise, there's more chance you've accumulated more fans, you've been around longer, certainly. But it feels like it's been quite a while before anything really took the world by storm when it comes to new franchises, or whatever you want to call them. All I'm saying is, yeah, I think Star Wars can endure and should endure and will to some degree. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, despite how many people say it's dying. I think it's going to be around for a while unless it really, really just falls off the cliff, which, it's teetering, I think. I think there's a lot of people who have lost interest because the quality is just not there. And again, that's up to Disney and Lucasfilm to change. They are the only ones that can convince people that Star Wars is not dead. And if it does die, or maybe if it doesn't die, maybe something else should come along and be the next generational thing. That can either be alongside Star Wars, or if worst comes to worst, it kind of takes its place. Don't know what that would be. I would guess, kind of like your father suggested, it could be something that takes the themes of Star Wars and presents them in a new and different way that maybe resonates better with this generation, which, of course, is just different than the previous generations. They are growing up in a radically different world than I grew up in, or that anybody who is a bit on the older side grew up in. So maybe something new needs to come along, or maybe Star Wars needs to change and adapt to the modern times. And when I say that, I'm not saying appeal to the modern audience. I'm saying realize what our kids are into today. On my other channel, we talked about anime being a huge, huge thing with the younger generation. I'm not saying go all in on anime, but certainly take a look at it, and they have been. We've got Visions, we've got The Ninth Jedi, the special series coming up, but maybe take an even closer look at it. I don't know. I'm rambling, so that's going to be all I got for you this time. It is now your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say here, or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do, you start your comment off with "Hey Thor," you ask your question. I try to answer it in a future video, but whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.